All right, welcome back. So today we are back on data logs, RPM, Cletus wheels, size of the wheel, and why my RPM is so far out of whack. I did some searching most of the night yesterday before I posted the data log video yesterday, or this morning for most, and couldn't find any answers. For me, it has to make sense. So reading all the comments, a lot of people viewing the video, and I think that's why these log videos don't get a lot of views. But the people that do view them, and you know, just like me, I'm just giving my experience of what I see based off what I've done on road, which I'm finding off road is, you know, a lot different, especially when it comes to an uneven ground. Not having downforce on a motor, that kind of stuff. With all that said, I went ahead and called Castle today, Castle support, to talk about, you know, what I'm seeing on my logs. Because if it's a glitch, then I don't understand. Ever since I calibrated this motor, you should know what motor I have in there and the KV and all that stuff. It should know, because that's the whole reason of doing the motor test, so it knows what motor you have in there so that it can make the data correct. Now, did I do that wrong? Is there something with the motor test that I did wrong? So it's best to, you know, I try to do it on my own without bothering people, because, you know, especially, you know, making calls to Castle or anybody, you know, you hate to sound foolish or any of that kind of stuff, but me, I don't care. I like to learn. So, and I've always done this, and anytime I've ever had questions with Castle, I usually just call Castle. Kind of like the 1100 kV motor when that came out. Everyone I stuck into a basher and I hooked up the sensor wire to had a problem within 10 minutes of running it. The sensor in the back of the motor would break, and then I'd have bad cogging. And then as soon as I unplugged the sensor wire, everything went back to normal. I think since then Castle has solved a lot of that issue with the 1100 kV motor that's censored, but I just recommend not running censored off-road when you're bashing, when you're trying to jump a big RC. But back to what we're doing here, I went ahead and called Castle today. So I'm going to bring you guys into the data. I didn't clear out the data log because I'm still not done analyzing it. I still haven't got the answers. Nothing is making sense to why the RPM is so high with the gearing. Like I keep telling you guys, I'm over geared like crazy on this RC, and to have such tall gearing and in a setup that should go well past the 100 mile an hour, it doesn't make any sense. With a 30 tooth spur on a spool and a 34 tooth pinion, that's considered reverse gearing. My temperatures are down, so I'm not overheating. But if you do the math with these differentials and this gearing, it's coming to like 190 miles an hour, which if I'm trying to compensate for wheel size, it still doesn't make sense. So it's like, you know what? I gotta have an answer, and I got to put out the video. So I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys into this data, and I'm going to show you what I learned talking to John at Castle Creations customer support. Let's get into this. If that's something you want to see, stick around, watch data, and then let's see what gearing we're going to go to. We definitely got to gear this thing So, because we are stuck at a mile per hour that's not making sense. Remember, I had talked about this 46 center diff. So our spur was 46 tooth with a 34 pinion. That's geared to like 160 mile an hour, something like that. And we went 68 miles an hour. And the only gear I had for my pinion, because it's a 5mm shaft and I have 8mm gears everywhere, I only have a 34 that fits on this motor for a pinion. Other than small gears, I have a lot of small gears, but as far as any like 27, 28, 29 tooth, I just don't have for a 5mm shaft. I have for an 8mm shaft, and the only thing I had for this spool setup was a 30 tooth that I can get the mesh right. So I'm gonna have to play with gearing, and I definitely can't gear up anymore. But according to the data log with RPM is telling me, hey, you need to gear way up. Like, you know, you're way off on your gearing, and yet mile per hour is not showing it. So we're going to get into why. That's something you want to know. Stick around. Let's look at some logs. Tell you what Castle told me today. All right. So here we are. I went ahead and called Castle Creations. Now, I was going to record the phone conversation, but when I called Castle Creations, and this is my second time doing this video, by the way, when I spoke to customer support, and I spoke to John, asked if I could, you know, film this conversation, and he preferred not to. So out of respect for them, it's best I just don't put that footage online. But John had a lot of knowledge, and answered the question within a minute of me talking to him. So been reading the comments all day, and I was hoping somebody in there would, you know, correct me, because this is why I do these log videos, is because I want people to comment. I do read them, and I was hoping somebody would solve this problem, and I know what numbers should look like. And like I said, I've never seen this kind of RPM difference ever. And so that had me baffled. So I'm going to show you what they showed me. So this RPM number, 100% wrong. And the reason it's wrong, even when you do the whole motor setup thing, it doesn't enter in a valuable piece of information about the motor that you have to change every time you do this. Look up your information on your motor, and then this is what's going on. So this number here, 73,870, is based off a 2-pole motor that's 1650 kV. You hear that? 2-pole motor. We have a 4-pole motor. Castle defaults to a 2-pole motor because, from what I was told, most of this information, a lot of this information is used by, I guess, aircraft people. So ground vehicles, KV's not too important when it comes to you know, the ground information you get, but the pole of the motor, whether it's 2, 4 pole, is very important to this information, especially when it comes to RPM. So in order to correct that, you would head over here to edit, right? Left click, change motor pole count, and gearing. Gearing's not important because just don't need it. Right here, the only thing you need to change, you see how it says 1100 kV? It's really not important. This could say 2000 kV, this can say 8000 kV. It's not going to mess with any of our numbers. And that's what I'm being told by Castle. Somebody in the comment section says, hey, you need to come in here and change your KV to the motor, and that's going to correct your RPM. KV doesn't correct RPM. It's the magnetic pole in motor. So we're going to click on that. We're going to hit backspace. We're going to hit 4. And then we're going to hit OK. As you see, I haven't changed the KV to the motor. And I will come back and change it just to show you that the numbers don't change. So we're going to hit OK. Everything flashed. Look at our KV now. 36,935. Now that makes more sense when it comes to the gearing I have in this vehicle, because I'm a 34 pinion and a 30 tooth spur. RPM is under. So, you know, you can round this down to say 35 or say 36, 46, 56. So 20,000 RPM under where I should be. Now, if I was over where it was 73 and some change, what you should do is gear up more, because you need to slow that motor down. That means you're pegging out the motor, which doesn't make sense to me. And a lot of people got it right, that when it comes to this type of voltage, it's 100% going to be an issue, because you can't hit that type of RPM. But I don't know many people out there that have run cleats on wheels, which are little weights all over these wheels, and it's getting airborne during the run. I don't know if anybody ever heard of stick shift cars, drag racing cars, when you hear something called a money shift, where you can 1-2-1 it, or you can 2-3-2 it. That's where you go from first gear to second gear. You think you're going into third, you accidentally put it back into first, you release the clutch, you peg the RPMs on a motor. You do have a fail-safe to where, say at 10,000 RPM, it cuts ignition and fuel so that you don't blow the motor up at, you know, at 10,000 RPM. But do you think when you money shift a car that the motor's going to stop at 10,000 RPM? It doesn't. It usually exceeds the RPM of whatever your data log can see. It'll rev past that to where the springs on the valves can't keep the valves closed anymore. It can't close it quick enough before the piston comes up. Piston smacks a valve, you break a piston, you break a rod, you put a hole through the block. They call it a money shift because you pretty much destroy everything in your motor. Pretty much breaks everything, because none of those parts were made for that kind of RPM. And most people catch it because when they go to release the clutch, it nosedives really quick, or it locks up the rear tires, and they push in the clutch real quick, but most of the time the damage is already done, the motor's already gone. And that's kind of like, because I'm a mechanic, that's kind of why I looked at RPM and I'm like, man, am I getting airborne? Am I skating across the grass where this isn't hooking, and we're just overspinning the heck out of this because these are little weights on all the wheels? Apparently that's not the case, even though that is possible. You can do something like that, but not by, I kept saying 20,000 RPM off. I want to say it was like 12,000 RPM. But that is possible. So now that you see the numbers here, right, we're going to go ahead and go back in here and let's change the KV. So remember that number, 36,935. Let's see if it changes. We're going to add KV now. Oh, change motor pole and gearing. As you see, 1-to-1 teeth. Nothing is entered over here for gears. So we're going to go up here to KV. We're going to get rid of this. Where's my backspace? We're going to enter in our KV, 1650 KV, right? Now, I was told this KV only matters to aircraft. Doesn't change any data when it comes to ground control vehicles. That's per John at customer support at Castle Creation. So we're going to hit enter, and look, 36,935 RPM never changed. None of our information, temperature, none of that has changed. Everything's still the same. So we're going to go over to our data log. And RC Guy Garage was saying, hey, you don't need to come down here to the bottom. You can just do it over here. And as long as you're within the square, you can release it. And it didn't do it. Let's try it again. Left click, drag it straight over here, release it. Look, it doesn't blow up. So just like I said, you have to left click here, drag it to the bottom so that you highlight your whole run, release it, now it blows up. So RC Guy Garage, that's why I do it that way, diagonal. I can't go across and release it, drag it over here. It doesn't pick up anything. It literally, watch, I'll do it again. So this actually puts a box around what I'm trying to do. I tried to tell him this on the phone. So you see how the box, you can see the little checks. So if I just drag it over here and he says I just release it, doesn't do anything. I gotta pick up the whole run. So up here at the top, diagonal, I go to the bottom. Maybe you can go to the middle, I don't know, but I know you need to highlight that whole, you see that box? Gotta highlight the whole thing and then it spreads it out. Maybe my computer's different than his, I don't know. But here we go. So here's our data, just like we were looking yesterday. I'm gonna follow the black line. So right here is where you can see I hit the throttle. 1.5, like he says, that's pretty much neutral. That's what John told me. I told him what controller I was using. He says anything over 1.5, you're not in neutral. And that's basically your trim setting. Because it looks like on every controller that I've calibrated, neutral seems to always be the same number. All you're trying to do is calibrate full trigger and reverse. Neutral apparently is all the same on all controllers. So he said to make sure that this number was 1.5 before I start my run, which it is. You can see I hit it. He made me delete everything in here except for the black line. And then we added RPM. And then we went over data. And I also talked to him about gearing. He's telling me I'm geared to 198 miles an hour with my gearing. Just so you know. With the cleat wheels. So here we go. Starting our run. We're at 12,930. Remember the big drop right here where I let off at the pole? You can see it's a pretty steady trigger up. We're at 1.8. We're still only at 22,340. Right about here, I ended up doing a wheelie, so I had to let off. So our throttle is actually going to start dropping down. Drop down a little bit because I just blipped the throttle right there. See how it stays at 184, 184, 184? It's just because I blipped the throttle to drop the front end. I let off and got right back on it. And when I got back on it, I pulled to full trigger. So we're only at 25,620. 25, 26. So right here you can see I'm starting to climb back up. I'm already back on. We're at 27. Remember I was saying it wasn't pulling away very hard? Think about the motor being overwhelmed. That the gearing's so tall that all our low end numbers and our torque is all gone. Now we're depending on horsepower to pull this 14-pound RC. So here you go. You can see I increased the throttle. There's a big up spike here. You guys probably can't see it, but I'll get rid of everything and just leave. I should probably just leave RPM and throttle in, but I kind of want to see amps. So right here, our ripple, because I nailed the trigger and there's an upward stroke, our ripple was 1.66 right here. That's why we need a cat pack, is because like I said, at 2.0, I tend to want a cat pack. We're at 3.1 maximum in this run. So I know I need to add a cat pack. So my plan was a cat pack and then fix gearing, but in order to fix gearing, I need to know what RPM we're at. I need to gear way down. I need to go the other way in gearing because of the total RPM. This is now making sense. So here, think about it. Ripple went up because I'm nailed the trigger. Now RPM's trying to catch up. We're at 28, 29, 32, 33. We're almost at full trigger. 35. We're almost at full trigger right there, and we're 34,607. So I'm at full trigger for a little bit of this run right here. At least a count of 1, maybe 1.5. So it's still increasing RPM, just not very fast. Why? Because we are so far over geared that the motor can't catch up anymore. And the cleats are getting really good traction at this speed that it's lugging down the motor. That it's not going to let the motor go any higher at the speed that we need it to go for such a short run that we're doing on this grass. Now, like I said in the first video, the reason I knew the last run there was a problem, because I went from one soccer field to the other soccer field. So I doubled my normal run, and we still were in the 70s and it didn't increase anymore. Which means and even when I blew the cleat, I was only a quarter of the way into the run when that cleat popped out. I let off way early because I hit something. And we were at 70 miles an hour. So you're talking 3/4 of the field, we only picked up 3 miles an hour. Now I'm thinking maybe it's space because I got to let off. But when I saw that cleat pop and we were at 70 miles an hour on our data log, I was like, man, that's a long way to go to only pick up 3 miles an hour. It's because I'm so far over geared. Here we go here. So we're going to finish this run. Look, we went from 35, 428, slide it over, to 35, 7, to 35, 480. We're losing RPM, and that's because the hop and the cleats biting on the grass, it's lugging that motor down. Move it over a little bit more. 34,668. We went down even more. It's like I'm telling you, the gearing is lugging this motor down. And our voltage is dropping to where it can't keep up, and we need a cat pack. Now our ripple, because I'm already full trigger, the ripple's already gone, the battery's already recouped, the ESC has enough power, it's trying to put it in the motor just can't accept it because the gearing's too darn tall. So we're going to keep sliding it over. 35.2, we went up, look, 34,247 right there. Look, still not done with the run, and we're at 33,701. So remember when I said I didn't hear the motor increasing? It's not. It's literally decreasing, and I'm holding the trigger steady. And that's because, like I said, not only is our voltage fell off, as you see we're at 27.3, that's still not bad for a voltage drop, especially on the third run of the day. 27 volts with as much amps as this ESC is trying to give this motor, but the motor gearing is just so tall, along with the cleats biting into the grass, it's lugging the motor down. And the data shows all that. This is all making sense to me now, and it was all because of one setting that was missed. 2-pole or 4-pole. And where did I see it? Right here. If you look right here, RPM, 4 poles. And then it gives you a math equation. That's where, if you see that, and I show my logs online and nobody picked up on it, I didn't catch it. I know it's a 4-pole motor. I just thought after I did the motor test, everything was fine. I never actually saw that. So that would go to 2-pole or 4-pole. And so if you guys see that on your data log, got to know to change that right there, and you do it under edit. And there you go. And hopefully the adjustments I'm showing is going to help you on your builds and help you to achieve that 100-mile-an-hour off-road speed that I'm trying to get. But there we go. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you to everybody watching out there. Rip something. Let's get this 100-mile-an-hour. Cletus wheels are working. They're not skating on top of the grass. Thanks for watching.